Hi, welcome to Jazz avec moi, the podcast where we will talk about everything from life, career, and entrepreneurship from a TCK perspective. My name is Mutoni, and I will be your host. Hi everyone, in this week's episode we speak with Imanzi Kayitare. I met Imanzi Kayitare when I moved to Toronto for a couple of years, and I've always known him as that person who is super involved in the community. He really cares about people, young people especially, and he worked as a public servant. So I really wanted to bring him on to just understand why he does what he does and share with us basically his experience and what has led him to public service. So I hope you enjoy it. So thank you so much, Imanzi, for doing this chat with me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really enjoying a lot of what you've been coming out with. So yeah, definitely excited to join this session.
Thank you. As you might know by now, I always like to start by having the host or the guest introduce themselves, and then I'll compliment if I feel like you missed anything. So yeah, who is Imanzi? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Imanzi Kayitare. I was born in Toronto. My parents, they came to Canada in the late 80s or mid 80s and grew up here in Toronto. And well, the background is from Rwanda, and they pretty much came here to give my brother and I opportunities, as with many other immigrant stories. And pretty much grew up here in the system and just been exposed to a lot of different issues that are happening here within the country. And so my background, my training, I went to school in Montreal, studied economics and public administration. And when I graduated, I was pretty fortunate. It was around 2009 to get a job with the federal government here in Toronto at the Department of Employment and Social Development Canada. And I started off as a junior advisor working within their labor market division. And pretty much I've been there now for, I can't believe now, it's been like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
This year. And I've had different, I think for me, I like when people say like 10 years goes by quick, it really does. And so I think for me, just moving around different business lines, getting exposure in how government works. And really, I guess for me, I kind of stuck around because I was interested and passionate about the files that we were working on, and also realizing that I guess being a public servant, you're called to serve the public, and so for me, I felt like it was almost paying it back in terms of paying it forward for I guess this adopted country that my parents came to, and wanting to serve this country in that capacity. And so I've been also involved. One thing I realized earlier on in my career, starting off, was to get as much experience as possible and trying to diversify your skill sets that are maybe outside of your 9 to 5. And so for me, I was really keen on really developing myself, and not just developing myself, but also how can I have a meaningful impact on the work I'm doing inside at the office, but also outside the office. And so that led to get involved in different community initiatives, in different leadership initiatives in the Canadian context, but then also in the Rwandan community. And so I think for me, just I don't know when it's kind of clicked, but I think I just knew that getting involved in the community was just something that I guess just became normal, and so I realized there's a big role to play as a diaspora here, and so yeah, no, for me, uh, I would say I would call myself, or not really call myself, but I'm really interested in just connecting and just collaborating across um, different communities, trying to make an impact both at work and in the community, and then also just connecting the world of policy and government, but then also from an impact of business and I don't know, even politics. I don't know how got I don't know how I keep getting drawn into stuff of politics, but that's another, I guess if you want to say, interest which naturally comes that I've been sort of getting more and more involved in. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, going to your point of politics, you can't really separate politics from life, right? Like the three are intertwined. Like politics drives policies, or policies drive politics, and they impact business. So you can't. We try to separate them, but eventually there will be an overlap, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no, for sure. It's I think as young people, and I would say even those coming from an immigrant background, we're kind of taught that politics is kind of dirty.
mhm,
It's something that you should not get involved in or just stay clear of it. You could have your opinions and your thoughts, but when it comes to politics, when it comes to getting involved, community building, it's something that's not really seen as something really good to get involved in. And so I think I think the value in I don't know I firmly believe that there's good politics, and good politics what I mean is empowering your communities, and however way that you define that, like that's politics. And so you're really caring about what is happening to your community, to the broader community, at a national level, at an international level. Whether it's looking at how trade deals are going on, or realizing or taking up issues on affordable housing, or
mm,
all these different regulations that are happening and how it affects us on a daily basis. And so yeah, no, I quickly learned that to get, I would, I guess, to really have an impact or to have your voice heard, you will really have to navigate those spaces and feel
mhm,
comfortable to navigate those spaces. And so this is what I firmly believe in what it means to really build social capital. So
yeah,
this is how the world is operating. This is how these communities in North America are operating, and also many other emerging countries, and also back home in Africa. Is that sometimes it's not just how much you know, but who you know, or in fact rather who knows you, and or what or if they know your community, and are you visible and all that. And so for me, I think that it's important to get involved, and to just start off slowly. So when actually recently I got involved, a friend of mine was running a campaign at the municipal level here in Toronto
mm,
last year, and he it was my first time really getting involved on a political campaign at a local level, and
mm,
it was just really cool to see just how much of an impact you can make, whether it's door knocking, whether it's getting involved in the issues that you care about, and understanding actually what issues that people are raising. Just having just an ear to listen, it really it really taught me about what it really means to be a servant leader. And so I kind of approach anything that I'm involved in with a servant mindset, and realize that whether it's at work, my day to day, I'm here to serve the people, or I'm here to serve my employer. Whether it's within my family, I'm here to serve my family. Whereas within the community, I'm here to serve the community. And so that's what's always kept me grounded. And so that's how I approach, politics and community building, and seeing the intertwined in that.
That's so important what you're saying, because I agree that it's sort of, we are taught to stay away from politics, and I think often it comes from like a place of safety, like
Mm-hmm.
don't get involved in it, like just stay out of it,
Yeah.
But it's crazy how at the end of the day, especially if you look at in all in all in all stages of life, but even here in Canada, like minorities or different disenfranchised communities are the ones that are going to be first hit whenever there are some like big changes
Mm-hmm.
that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of policy, which you would think would make it even more urgent for us to get involved and to be active and to be vocal, but that kind of
Mm-hmm.
goes against
Mm-hmm.
your whole self-preservation
Yeah. Yeah.
approach, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
really
For
takes like stretching yourself and being intentional and really wanting to get involved and wanting to go find the information and being interested in it enough to say this matters and actually care enough to to go do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that I can have some impact and I can do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Uh, did you always want to do like to be a public servant? Like, did you know, I guess, graduating that you wanted to go work in government?
Um, I No, I would say I didn't necessarily like narrow it down to that. I would
Mm,
say I was open, and so when I was studying, I guess the courses and the people that I was meeting, I did have an interest in working policy, and I was open whether that could be actually at a private sector, at a nonprofit, consulting. But um, I think when for me when I graduated, it was at that time of when they had a downturn in the economy. It was at 2008, 2009, and
mhm,
I had two offers. I think one of the offers was a short term gig, and then this one, the government, and it was end up being a full time gig, and so I ended up going with that. And I thought that I'm like, okay, maybe I'll give it 2 years, build some experience, and then and then just move on. But while I've been there, um, I was given different roles to sort of build more competencies and skills. And I was sort of, I think when I came in very much with a curious mind, and I was sort of, how could
mhm,
I learn? How could I understand how this big machinery works? Um, and through that curiosity and through um, trying to, I guess, improve. And for me, like I kind of see problems as opportunities, and so looking at different problems, and then sort of giving pitches and recommendation management, and then from that was able to get different experiences in that branch and in other branches, and so beginning to get known for just being versatile in different settings, and so I guess that's what ended up me sort of staying, and
mm,
and I've enjoyed it, so far. just because it's definitely meaningful work. And I think right now we're at a time where, especially within the public sector and the Canadian public sector, where they're really looking at not just how can we solve issues um, and provide solutions within our own sort of space, but how can we collaborate across different sectors? And so now there's this big emphasis in collaborating across different sectors, private sector, civil society, community, businesses, and really getting more of that user experience from or to delivering it for citizens. And so this is actually not right now at a very interesting time, and so there's this big focus right now on how we can sort of transform our services to make it more digital, and so they are getting lots of feedback, and so being a part of those teams that are providing sort of recommendations on how we could best improve our digital services for clients has been a worthwhile experience so far. But definitely, if I wasn't being pushed, and if I wasn't trying to expand and develop, whether be it at work and outside of work, that was really something that really kept me going and saying, okay, well, now let me start bringing in some of these outside experiences that I've been developing outside. Let me try to bring it within my day-to-day 9 to 5. And so that's something even as like a life sort of advice and principle that's going forward. What I really advise a lot of young people about is to try to, especially right now where we're heading with the whole future of work and this push for continual ongoing learning, is that we're going to need to continually to develop our skill sets, our competencies. And for me, there were certain areas where I wanted to develop. So, for example, I wanted to develop my leadership skills, and so possibly getting into leadership, one day. So I tried to develop my leadership skills mostly outside of work. And so getting involved on a nonprofit board, sat on a couple nonprofit boards, which is a great opportunity to really gain hands-on experience in strategic thinking, analytical, making decisions. So that's been a great experience, and that from that being able to translate that into my current role. So definitely, I'm a big believer in say, hey, if you're maybe not necessarily getting the skill sets or the experience that you are in your normal day-to-day responsibilities, and if you've been trying to seek it out, maybe you've run into a wall, and just definitely try to develop and gain those skill sets outside of work, which are definitely lots of opportunities. When I definitely tell people the one place to start is to start with your community. Start with the things that interest you, and for sure there'll be plenty of opportunities to get involved.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting you say that. I had I think one of my last episode or the one before was with Moses, and that's also what he was saying. Like, so pursue what you're interested in, and then you just stay in it, right? Because you have a true interest in it. And then opportunities happen, but just
Right.
pursue what you're interested in and what you're passionate in. And I found it so impactful when he said that, because I feel like sometimes we overthink it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we overthink it, but then it makes sense because, well, if you really had no real interest in the first place, then there is no way it can be sustainable. And then nothing happens overnight. You have to keep at it for a couple of years, sadly.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said you studied in Montreal. What did you study?
So I went to Concordia University, and I studied economics. So majored in economics and minor in public administration. So I guess that's where for me, I loved numbers in theory, and I also loved policy and just analytical thinking. And so for me, I just blended the two. And I guess for me, I was pretty fortunate, I guess.
That's
And
awesome.
landed in the type of work I'm doing now.
That's awesome. And then for the nonprofit board, how did you join it? Where did you find it?
So there's probably, so my first one that I joined was it was a nonprofit housing agency, and it was actually in the area which I was living in, and they had an opening for board of directors, and this was my first. Actually, I think I was nominated for that, and I went out for that. So that was like my first real sort of board experience, sort of board 101 experience. I think for that I was like maybe 1 or 2 years like out of school for that, being the youngest one there, and then the most recent one, which is the one where I served the longest for about maybe 4 years, 5 years, was the Toronto Workforce Innovation Group. And so I was there as a board member there. And for that one, I believe I found out about it through, I guess, being on all these different email lists, distribution lists. And so one of them was through Ryerson, and it was called the On Board. And so it's a program where they're looking to get diverse candidates to serve on boards. And so knowing that that's a big issue in terms of representation and diversity on boards, whether it be nonprofit, especially on corporate boards and public boards. So I applied for that program. I think a friend of mine sent me the information about that because I had expressed that I'm looking to really develop my leadership skills and get involved in some boards that I can have an interest in, or that with my experience and insights I could contribute to. And so for me, workforce development, labor market was right up my alley with the work I'm doing in the government. But then I was there representing, I guess, from a government lens, and so they had a different composition of board members, and so that was a great opportunity again of just being involved. It was a small but yet still effective board, in that they ran a lot of programs. You're just overseeing the operating budget of the organization, and so that's also something too. You definitely get that financial expertise, and really understanding budgets. So if you definitely have taken any accounting classes, and you definitely learn about that from a theory point of view, and probably if you end up working on the corporate side, you may be involved in it to a certain degree, or maybe contributing to it. But being involved at a board level is that you're really involved actually in overseeing and providing strategic advice and insights on the financial health of the organization. Many organizations could be in excess of maybe $1 to $5 million, and so that was also another great experience in wanting to get and to develop my financial analysis skills, and just even wanting, just learning just how to ask what the right questions are, right? Because that's another skill set that you definitely take and can be transferable. So, so for me, it was definitely getting involved, learning about these different programs that are out there, and then just applying for it, which I'm pretty sure it is still open, called Diversity on Board, and anyone can apply for it. And it's a great program for those within the diverse space to get exposure on boards.
That's so interesting. That's something I would be interested in doing. I guess I just have to be more intentional about it and actually go look for one and apply. Because I think, it gives you so much experience. Like it's such a different way of looking at things. And I think there is also a sense of responsibility because you are, as a group, you are making a decision that are going to affect the direction of whatever organization you're supporting.
Right.
So I think just that, like, that's such a crazy concept to me. So I think it would be an interesting experience to
Yeah.
go through, you know?
Yeah. And also, I forgot to mention, yeah, definitely also, like there are some programs which you could apply to, whether it's at a municipal level or provincial level, where they have different appointment opportunities and
Mm,
organizations. But to be honest, a lot of it comes through networking.
yeah, for sure.
So sometimes many of these boards maybe not be directly advertising, and so a lot of it is networking to following these different organizations, and sometimes if there's actually yeah, a lot of times has been through circulating that that they're looking for different board members, and so that's also something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, but I can also understand that because I guess they're looking for people who are already involved in the organizations and who already understand how the organization works or at least are in that circle, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of circles back to your initial point about building social capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people already have to know who you are in order to choose you. So, for example, a couple of years ago, right when I was coming back to Montreal, like end of 2016, beginning of 2017, there was this call in Montreal. I think it was called like Groupe de 36 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really looking for like young professionals who are um, interested in joining nonprofit boards and would want to do something like that because there are a lot of organizations in Montreal that don't have a lot of young people on their boards and they're trying to they call it la relève. They're trying to
Mm-hmm.
create
Mm-hmm.
like a new ground, like a new
Yeah.
talent pool. They're trying to create a new talent pool of younger professionals that understand
Mm-hmm.
how non-profit boards or boards of directors run, so
Mm-hmm.
that when the older people who are on them currently retire, the
Mm-hmm.
younger ones know how to run them, and so it can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied. I was just like, "Yo, shoot your shot." I applied,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I knew that I just came back to Montreal, like literally, like I hadn't even done anything. Like I had just gotten my job and I was kind of sort of like and like sort of settling down again.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I didn't get it. But then when I went back and I looked at the profile of the people that they had chosen in that cohort of board of director talent, they were all people with like very impressive resumes, but the thread was that they had already been involved in the Montreal community in some capacity or another. Like either they were part of some like professional boards or they were part of some community groups, but they were
Mm-hmm.
already doing something in Montreal, and so they had built that social capital and that credibility of like I'm already involved in my community and I already kind of know what's going on, and so this is
Yeah.
why I am worthy of being on your not on your board of directors.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So that's good
that's
food
great.
for thought.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. And then my other question was, so for example, I know that you're also involved in like Harry and like a lot of other Rwandan and African like conferences and such. How did you get involved in that? Was it also from a perspective of I know that I want to develop these skills and I'm interested in this, so let me like combine the two? Was it more like let me figure it out and let me check it out? Like, yeah, how did you get involved?
I can definitely answer that. For me, how I got involved, I guess it's kind of crazy. I'm just trying to figure out like how I got involved. I guess in the community, I could probably trace it back to my parents. So
Hmm.
So when my parents, when they came, Canada in particular, at that time there was a small community. This is late 80s, early 90s. There was a small Rwandan community here in Canada, or some in Toronto, Quebec City, Montreal, Ottawa, and they used to have lots of festivals back in the day. And this was pre 94. And so there was, I just remember going to, as a young kid, going to these meetings and town halls and festivals. And my dad, he started as the first London Community Association here in Toronto, which was actually, I guess, covered the whole of Canada. And so, I just remember at that time just going to all these late night meetings and just being, just seeing what was going on. And so, so for me, it was like having seen how my parents just always cared about the community. Like I remember there was always like a ton of people that were just staying at the house. Like anyone that was new coming from back home, needing a place to stay the first, couple of weeks, couple of months, like it was our place, or they were either connecting them to other people, that sort of thing. So so they lived their lives very intentionally. And of course, given the situation that was happening at that time. And so they very much live their lives very open and very inclusive, and wanting to engage with the community. And so so I learned at a young age community building 101. So I guess if you were to take a class or do an online lesson on community building 101, this is probably what the first thing that they would teach you: how to effectively organize a grassroots, organization, and to do this at that time, with either not a lot of resources and just doing it from just passion, I would say, and just determination. I think if I look back on that, that's that kind of what led me. And so because of that, that closeness to the community, I've I've always been very close to comedians. So, and then as I got older, and realized that okay, there had been also mentors that have been around the community, whether it was teaching language, whether it was the on the dancing, all of that. And so as I got older, and I think probably maybe when after high school and getting into university, because living in Mississauga was in a sense very sheltered, and not that much exposure to different African communities. But then when I went away to Montreal, and for one, just being exposed to lots of different African communities and being exposed to run the community, really fueled my interest to get involved and to realize, okay, how could we come together and practically support one another? Like, I know we love to socially get together, and that's part of our culture, and that's part of who we are. And so, but I realized, okay, how can we practically come together? And so when I heard that there was an initiative starting off in Ottawa, this was around 2011, called the Canadian Association of Rwandan Youth, CARI, I was just like, wow, okay, this is good. And quickly connected with them and say, hey, like, let's scale this even larger. Let's think how we could have this in each of the main cities. That we have around the youth diaspora that are within all these main cities. And so for me, I saw that there is a need for bringing together the Rwandan youth, showing them, or not even showing them, but just valuing the culture, the identity, but then also how could we practically support one another? And for me, the biggest thing for at the beginning was just supporting one another through skills development, through mentorship, through leadership. Because if we look at other communities that are here in Canada, this is how they do it. So when I talk about social capital, like this is how they do it. Of course, it starts off in a very grassroots sort of structured way, in that we're all coming together for the love of our community and wanting to have a better future. And then, but there also comes a time when we need to think about how could we strategically support one another. So from the beginning, so we started off a chapter here in Toronto, and had, I guess, no really formal training in this, but just sort of going with the flow. And so for me, it wasn't how or what I could gain out of this. It was sort of how could I serve the community? How could we do better? And for me, my philosophy is I view measure of success by how all of us are doing well in a community. If we're all not winning, then something is wrong. Like if only I'm winning, or if only I'm getting ahead, and there's one or two people, and that's great, and it's great to have role models, and one or two role models that do that. But if we're all not making sure that others are also not getting in those places, then that's something that we need to do a better job of. And so that's how I view it, as to how best we can support each other. And so whether it was organizing workshops, organizing mentoring sessions, and to see that over 7 years now, it's still going strong. And here in Toronto, and you have just so many young people that have come into the city. So there's been a surge of young people that are here, and now we're spread all across the GTA, including Hamilton. And so just seeing even the young people that are coming, just getting involved and connected, and that are taking it to newer levels, it's been amazing. And so that's definitely been like a passion project, or that I've always had. And through that, I've seen how doors could open up for how can we collaborate and to share our best practices with other communities, and vice versa. How can we learn from other communities as well? Even other African communities and youth communities. So we've worked with the Ethiopian community, Eritrean community, those from Kenya, those from Nigeria, Ghana. And then so I learned also too that, and again, from my days back in Montreal, and just realizing just how much better we could be if we're doing it all together. And so that's why I wanted to get more involved within what's happening within the African space, African diaspora space. And so it led me to get involved with an initiative in Toronto called the Friends of Africa Economic Development Summit. And so for me, I've seen it that to get involved and to really have an impact, sort of this Pan-African impact. Because when we're here in the city or in the country, of course, we are all Black individuals, and coming from the African communities, the common thing is, well, we don't work well together. And I really wanted to dispel like that notion, saying that we can't work together. Actually, we can work together, and we could definitely make an impact. And so I got involved in it a couple of years ago. The organization called the Casa Foundation, and its main aim is to bring together African diaspora investors, public sector, um, community, anyone that has an interest in the future of what's happening on the continent in terms of economic development. And so that's also been another passion of mine, and I've gotten very passionately involved in entrepreneurship. And I think for me, just going back home frequently over the last couple of years has been another eye opener as well, and realizing that we have so much opportunities to make an impact, and whether even if we're not physically there in Rwanda, that we can have an impact here, whether that's being involved within the local communities, local diaspora communities, or getting involved in other groups and initiatives that are part of the African diaspora. I think for me, as I narrowed it down, I thought, what is one thing that brings us together? What's the one issues that we all have in common? And there's issues on how can we bring more economic opportunities, investments back home to the continent. And I I saw that that's a major opportunity, and so get involved in initiatives such as the Friends of Africa and leading that for the last few years, and just seeing the different representation from the continent there has been great. And so for me, it's been a great opportunity to get involved, and it's really also opened up my eyes to what possible avenues I could get into. Because I'm definitely, my heart is always, even though people would joke around and tell me, well, Imanzi, you're born here in Canada, but you have so much passion and zeal for Africa. They're like, oh, how did you get this way? Or you feel like, I feel like you just moved here from Africa, like, a year ago. I'm like, I don't know, but I think if you trace it back, it's been a combination of different life events and different exposures that has led me to where I am today, where again, I'm quite confident and quite appreciative and blessed in realizing that yes, I'm Canadian, I'm Rwandan, and to embrace that fully. But if you were to ask me in terms of what I think about on a daily basis, what keeps me up, what I'm strategizing, what I'm connecting with, it has everything to deal with what's happening on the continent in Africa, in Rwanda, and elsewhere. And so, so for me, getting involved in initiatives and organizations that align with that, it's great. And so whether it's that or other similar initiatives, whether it's Black Professionals in Tech initiative or other Black focused initiatives, again, it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about measure of success, and if we could all win together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that it's an interesting thing happen when you go to college, John, because that's kind of when you're taken outside of your comfort zone, like outside of what you knew. And for me too, it was really, I guess, the moment where I really realized, like, oh, well, look at all these other Africans. No, actually, in my high school, I also had other Africans as well. But I guess where I met maybe like other Africans that were like-minded, And so going back to your point of there is this stereotype that we don't work together, or we cannot work together. Like, that's not true. We just need to figure out what's our cause, like what are we trying to work for, and then find your allies, find the people who want to work with you on that particular cause or that particular reason, and then we will work together, and that's like any other people, really. But also shout out to your parents for the community building 101.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess, it's interesting as well that growing up, watching them, and I guess unconsciously being part of it, right? Because you were absorbing, and I'm sure you were helping like any Rwandan child would.
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah, I
you were
wanted
sort of
to
like
go and play with
taking
my friends, but they're like, no, no, no. Like
no,
my Saturday afternoon to Sunday, Saturday evening were just meetings. So young
exactly. You were
people,
voluntold.
yeah. So I guess maybe why now I have a higher threshold for long, drawn out meetings. It's probably because of that time, and so it goes
Yeah,
comes full circle.
yeah, right. That's crazy, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and then another question, actually, we were talking about how when you joined Carrie, part of it was, yeah, let's get all these Rwandan youth together and let's talk about culture and support one another through like skills development through life, whatever we're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
But then you also mentioned identity.
Mhm.
So you're actually the first person I talked to who was born here. um,
Mhm.
and what was it like to be born here and to grow up here?
Uh yeah, I guess I don't know. Maybe I've I've played I don't know both spaces. I guess for me, I could see how um, growing up here and you have one frame of identity, versus
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you came here at a later age and you have that form of identity, and how you approach life and how you approach the community in some aspects is sort of shaped by that. Um, yeah, I think for me, I guess I didn't want to be like defined by that, and I realized, okay, well,
Mm,
it's how can we bring it bring the two together?
mm,
So which I find is much harder, and it's easier said than done, but
sure.
has been a challenge in that there are different needs that
Mm,
encompass it, and uh, so I think for here growing up here, I just remember hearing or my mom talking about saying, well, you got to work twice as hard here. Uh,
mm,
so from a very young age, you're taught or you're made aware about Black consciousness and
mm,
how much that, and I guess early forms of prejudice or racism discrimination, like how that could shape you as you navigate the different spaces and you have different experiences. And so um, for me or for us, it was because we were so still very connected within the community or within the Rwandan community. Uh,
mm-hmm,
I feel like I didn't have to choose and say, well,
mm,
now I want to be Canadian, and then okay, now let me flip it. Now let me be Rwandan. So it was I didn't have to choose, but I know for others it could be a challenge,
mm,
and I have seen it be a challenge, and whatever background that you come from, and so. But I think the cool thing about here in Canada, maybe compared to other countries, and that's whether US or anything like that, where it's like when
yeah.
a whole melting pot where we just have to conform to that one identity and that identity of that adopted country that you're in.
Mm,
Beauty part of Canada is that yes, you are able to maintain or to value also your culture, your identity, your ancestry. At the same time, contribute to life here in Canada, and to also be proud of that. And so, yeah, this is something that I know not a lot of people. It's it could be difficult
yeah.
for some, and whether you experience it at a young age or maybe you experience it at an older age or later age or high school, university, or in working all of that. Um, I think because I've seen it and I've seen it maybe some of the young people and just being aware of it in other communities is just um, to try to make a welcoming environment or inclusiveness in whatever that I do. And so, yeah, so I think for me, I just not having to just choose. So if you're asking, yes, I'm Canadian Rwandan. I am just as much, Rwandan as maybe someone else that came. We just have different life experiences, different ways of seeing things to a certain extent, but it one's not higher than the other, and comes to contributing and playing a part and making an impact. You can make an impact in wherever that you are. I really believe fundamentally comes down to a mindset.
100%.
So that's something that you could take. And so for me, it's come down to the mindset. And so that's how I approach it. And I guess that's why I'm very free. It's actually very liberating. So, but I know each one will have their own journey in getting towards that. But definitely, if we can help support or serve as practices, and just being there, especially for the young people that are there, and that we are a sizable community now, and there's many families that are here and have been settled, and there will be many more. And so for the next generation that's going to be coming up, which many young runners that will be born here and going forward. And so just making a place to say, hey, well, you are valued, and just to be proud of who you are and to have that dignity. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's interesting, definitely. I also wonder if you working in public service, like working for the government, also helps with that part, because I guess you're working for like the greater Canadian community, right? And you're thinking about people, like it's not like me who's in business and I'm selling software. Like you're thinking about the well-being of Canadians in Ontario.
Yeah. Well, no, for sure. It's whether I wouldn't say okay, it has to be because you're in a very in a sector where you're giving back towards the people, and obviously, yes, definitely, whether it could be in a public sector, nonprofit, private. But even if you're in those circles, again, it will come back to the mindset in how you approach it. And so, for me,
sure.
definitely, it helps to a certain degree, and yes, but I work and my title is just my title there. It will find me there, and I won't get my worth from that. But I will know that my identity and for me first, realizing that I'm grateful for the opportunities and the blessings that God has to me, and so that is my first rooted identity, and everything else is then after. And so I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a husband now, I'm a community member, I'm a dad, and so that sort of shapes, in how I approach it. And so, but definitely, there's people will have a journey in going towards that, and so realizing that, especially in this part of the world, we're definitely going to have those challenges, and I think it's just that hope to really get us forward.
Yeah, for sure. For me now, like I like that you are at a stage where you're comfortable with both identities, and that I like when you said you're free. For me now, I'm learning how to be Canadian. I don't know, like because I guess I've lived here for so long, but I wasn't Canadian. I think there is a difference. It's crazy, but there is a difference when you go from like, oh, I'm a PR and I'm questioned at the border every time I travel, to when you're a Canadian and they're like, welcome home, you know? And so now it's like, oh, what does that mean? Yeah, like what is my role in this community as a Canadian? Like that's my and like identity is forever shifting and evolving, right? So yeah, so for me, I would say that's where I am now. Like I don't know what Michaela as a Canadian is going to do yet.
No, yeah. Maybe, yeah. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and overly thinking about or stressing about it. But I think those what you're doing and the fact that you're wanting to contribute and to make an impact in whichever way, and the fact that you're here and wanting to do that here, that's something to be celebrated. And so yeah, no, I definitely, yeah, just don't put too much pressure on it, and then it'll come naturally.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll come naturally. So yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, but that's also my personality. Like I just overthink a lot.
Yeah, well, definitely, yes. If you're very over analytical about each move and each decision you make and each thought you're doing, then questioning.
Yeah, Imanzi, you can't help me with that.
Are they gonna revoke your citizenship because they see that?
No.
And there's no, it's kind of hard to quantify it or to measure it, and it's not like it's not like you have to go back. You've already got your citizenship and be like, okay, well, how many times have you voted or paid your taxes? Okay, yes, now you're on track to being a good Canadian productive citizen. It's actually very arbitrary, because if you look at it, like probably those two things maybe that stand out: voting and paying your taxes. You were paying taxes before, okay, now you're just voting.
Yeah,
that's one big difference, which could have a great impact, and that's one of the great contributions that you could definitely make. And I think just getting involved in issues that are greater than yourself and
exactly
greater than your community, I think that's also playing your part too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So community work is hard. It demands a lot of time, and it can be sometimes ungrateful. So, how do you stay motivated through it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Something that I've thought about sometimes too. I think the motivation it'll come from how we, what our initial motivations are going into it. So I think that doing that deeper dive thought or analysis to really realize, well, am I really doing this to A, beef up my resume, or B, get noticed, or C, find a new spouse or something like that? If those are your motivations, or if in many cases maybe some can be very valid, but yeah, really checking to see what your motivations are, and if they're being guided right, then you will definitely stay on track, and you'll learn to not take it personally. So maybe an example I could use is, I guess when we were starting off, just building this whole youth association, and just trying to develop programming and trying to get the community out, and do a lot of time and planning going to these things, and maybe some events or some workshops were good, good attendance, and then maybe some others weren't, and so there was some inconsistencies in that, and then we're like, okay, well, what's happening? How come we're not getting that consistency? Or how can we get more people to take more initiative? So this is something that I noticed, and so how I stay motivated is again sticking towards the vision. And sometimes when you're doing the work, whether it could be in your 9 to 5, whether it could be volunteer or different type of initiative, we're like diving deep, like in like the very present and like the now and next month and next programming cycle and all that type of thing. But for me is looking at, okay, well, maybe, this person came and they got connected to this, and I was able to write a reference letter and that person got a job, all that sort of thing. So like there's small wins along the way, right? Yeah. So what will keep me motivated is those small wins. And in the midst of challenge, in the midst of roadblocks, if we look up, and if we're not just sort of diving deep and just looking down, but if we look up, if we're talking to people, as we are engaging with people, and really taking interest. Like for me, like I love going on just coffee chats and just meeting up with them, and so and just really just getting an idea, just where people are at, or maybe how I can support them, or who I can connect them with, or I introduce with, all that type of thing. Like, and so that's how I would see to keep me going, and just seeing how those small wins could translate into much more larger wins when you're looking at the bigger vision, and setting yourself, or setting it up for continuity, for sustainability. And that's something that really will stay top of mind. Realize, okay, this is good. I'm committed towards this. Yes, I'm not being paid for this. Yes, there's long hours, or not really long hours, but looking at it from a team perspective and operating across the board, because now I realize that definitely your time is precious now, and as you progress through life, the battle for your time is going to become more and more intense. So how can you strategically balance your time, find aspects of value and that you contribute, at the same time just building up a community, or building up a team, or all of that. So it's going to be a need to do all of that. But just definitely evaluate those small wins and just think about the bigger picture vision, and collaborate with your team, and have a good tribe around you. A tribe that believes you. That's for me, actually, I love learning from people. So I'm not one to get intimidated. Okay, someone is much more knowledgeable or smarter than me in this. Like, hey, like I want to learn from you, or you have this bright, amazing idea, or I got involved in this organization. I want to learn from you, all that. Hey, how can I bring that to what I'm doing here in this space, and vice versa? And so, I guess, being on a continual pursuit of learning and will definitely keep your motivations high.
Yeah, I like celebrating the small wins, because sometimes we get so bogged down in the details that you kind of don't look up, to like take a deep breath and just, appreciate the impact that you have had so far. And like, I know that you guys definitely do, especially with Carrie, that you do like a lot of good work. I love the financial workshops, the career workshops, because those are the things where I'm like, yeah, that would have been nice when I was 18 and I got a credit card. I wish you gave me a credit card just because, and I didn't know what a credit score was. So those are like really needed life skills that will help set us up for success. So they're definitely worth it,
Now we find ourselves that now we're mentors, in whatever shape or way or
Exactly.
form. But now we're at the stage where to be passing on our small wins, our advice, our failures, and just open and vulnerable. I think is definitely the way to go. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What would you tell your younger self like 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
um. So I would say I'm uh, a bit more open now. And interesting, people say, "Oh, well, you're very much an extrovert and you love getting out there and all of that." But
Mm-hmm.
really had to work on this in a sense.
Mm.
Where some things, yes, came naturally, some other things didn't. And so I know what I would tell myself starting out was just don't don't care or don't it doesn't matter what people will say about you. And I know I definitely um, would love to please everyone, but realizing that you can't please everyone.
Mm.
um, and sometimes if you're trying to please everyone, then that could be a hindrance on yourself. And so with me, just being open from the very get-go, just saying just how I feel and believe, and just that's something that would help as I'm progressed in sort of building up confidence in these different areas. So yeah, no, that's something I would have loved to do earlier on, and now definitely want to pass this on to others.
Hmm. And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Mm. So yeah, I've thought about that. 2 years, 5 years. Um, so I'm open. So I would love to see how. Then there's been some ideas that have been floating around. Some people have been talking with about doing some projects there on the continent,
Hmm.
East Africa, and so um, I would like to, or actually before 5 years, but within the next short term, actually execute on some of
Hmm.
these ideas that I've been thinking about, these startup project ideas I've been having. And actually right now I've been sort of wanting to do a more deeper dive in the tech space, and I've been trying to get more understanding in that. And so for me, I would love to be able to practically support and um, support the development that's happening there in East Africa, whether it's in Rwanda and elsewhere, but whether that's being from here in Canada and supporting sort of projects that are happening there in Rwanda, or being from there and here. So um, yeah, that's something that I'm really eyeing towards within these next short term goals.
Nice. I wish you luck. Let me know if I can help you in any way. I don't know how,
Yeah,
but let me know. So we'll
yeah,
figure it out.
yeah, for sure, exactly. No, definitely, I'll definitely keep you updated.
Yeah. And then I don't know, what advice would you give um our younger generation or someone who's
Mm.
trying to do what you're doing?
Yeah, don't know. So I think what I would say is we are definitely explore, exploring and being open to failure is
Mm,
something that I know doesn't come easy, and that we want to sort of mitigate our risk as much as possible.
mm-hmm.
And so, what some people's failure may be is maybe I I don't see myself being a public speaker. I don't see myself communicating to large groups, and therefore I only just want to stay in my lane. Let me have this. Let me do that thing that I'm good at. But I would definitely encourage young people to, if they are interested in building their skills, in developing their experiences, to really think about how you could get involved in issues and interests that are happening around you, and that's in the community is a great starting place. Doesn't have to be the community. Your community could be anything, whether it's within where you're from, or whether it could be in the academic community, whether it could be in the nonprofit, corporate communities, like all these different kind of communities. Like there's tons of communities that you can be a part of, but maybe starting off with a place that you're in right now, and build from there. And then you won't feel kind of overwhelmed, because a lot of conversations right now is having, well, how do I get a job if I don't have any experience, and what's going to happen at the end of my graduation, all that type of thing, or how do I transition to make that next step in my career, and, or how do I settle down and have a family, all these types of things. And so definitely, like, the one thing that's going to be constant is change, and so change is going to happen. But definitely preparation is key. And preparing, and that's probably one thing I would probably maybe to answer your earlier question in terms of what I would want to do better, or what's something I would like to do better is preparing, and how I approach basically what I'm doing right now. So being intentional, in some cases, writing it out, having a vision board for where you want to go in the next 2 to 5 years. Have some people, like, share that vision board with a few people that you trust, build accountability, because I think that the accountability was also key, in having people that I could bounce things off from, maybe some people that are a bit more ahead, or whether that's an area that I wanted to really grow in. And so preparation is key, and just really, just explore as much as you can, and definitely you'll be able to see what your passions are as you explore, and as you learn, and as you stay curious.
Awesome. Thank you. Any final words, or anything that we forgot?
No, I think that's pretty much it in terms of what we covered. But yeah, no, thanks again for this opportunity. And you're doing a great job in starting off this initiative. And I remember you started off with a Facebook blog a couple of years ago, and now you kind of morphed into this and the podcast. But no, this is good. I think this is something that we should be doing more of, in terms of telling our stories and becoming active storytellers, because this is an amazing initiative to really showcase and to share best practices and just learn from each other. And I think what you're doing is great. It's phenomenal. Definitely going to be sharing. And just keep up the great job.
Oh my God, thank you. You just made me so happy, because you just defined what I'm trying to do. And I was like, yes, people get it.
Oh yeah, no, I get things. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm all
because last time I was talking to someone else, and I don't know, man. It just made me. It was not encouraging, and I know not everybody's gonna like love it and encourage it, but I left that conversation feeling like, am I not clear enough? Do I need to like go redo my introduction and like re-clarify everything? But just hearing you speak, I'm just like, okay, maybe he wasn't my target audience, and that's okay.
Yeah, no.
You
Some,
know?
some people will get it. Some people will get it confused. Some will critique. Like,
Yeah,
I think once, yeah, definitely, like once you put yourself out there, like that's something that's going to come with the territory.
of course.
Not everyone's
Yeah.
like you, or not everyone's going to like or get it, and all of that type of thing. But it's okay, right? And that's perfectly fine. And actually, I've heard that many times, and saying, be like, okay, well, I don't want to put myself out there because I'm not sure how it's going to be received and what people are going to
Yeah.
think, and how about if it fails? And people are going to know that I started something and I failed, and
Mm-hmm.
all that type of thing. But yeah, no, I think what you're doing is great. Is building a lot of confidence, and actually a lot of other people who may be sort of watching this, and because you never know who is watching you, and so
Yeah.
the moves that we make, how we lead, and how we portray ourselves, like generally and authentically, then
Mm-hmm.
you never know what impact that you're doing. So.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's very true. Yay! Thank you so much. Yeah, and at the end of the day, like as if even if like one person listening to you pushes them to say like I don't know to make one change in their life, like oh my god, maybe I should think about government, or maybe I should think about policy, or maybe let me go volunteer, or let me go join a nonprofit board. Just make them about things differently, or about what they were trying to do, or maybe encourages them to go do it, like then I will have succeeded. Like that's what I'm trying to do. Like just show like different people doing different things and enjoying it along the way. So yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Imanzi.
Yeah, no problem. I'll definitely be sharing it.
Yay, and then we'll be in touch.
Okay, all right.
What did you think of the conversation that you just heard? Don't hesitate to leave us comments on the Facebook group or on the website, jazavicmoir.com. As the old adage goes, sharing is caring. So if you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, like and subscribe. Until next time, keep striving, keep thriving, and keep shining.